Mayor, welcome back here. There is a lot of tension in Latino communities all across the state, especially in San Antonio, where 64% of the population is Hispanic. How many people have been detained so far in your city? Any idea yet?
No idea in terms of the detentions that have happened since Trump took office. We know that there have been enforcement activities, just as there have been under President Biden, President Trump in his first term, and President Obama before that. San Antonio works with law enforcement to enforce detainers of violent criminals, and that has been the case in this new administration. So we've been hearing about some enhanced enforcement activity, but nothing new, no information has been shared with us.
Give us an idea of the mood in San Antonio right now. There's tension, I know, in a lot of cities across the state. A lot of people are apprehensive right now, especially Latinos. What's it like there? Are people showing up for work in different industries?
I've heard anecdotes of some, schools where students are not showing up because there's a lot of fear. I've heard the same on some job sites. Nothing to, no objective data to be measured on that, but certainly the Trump administration's goal of spreading fear, particularly through immigrant communities, but also communities like ours, like you said, which are 63% Latino. We know that there's 2 million people in Texas that are part of a mixed status household. So there's a tremendous amount of fear. And the anti-immigrant rhetoric that Trump first brought down the escalator in 2016 is only ramped up in his first term and now into his campaign and now a second term.
You talked about cooperation with federal agents. Let me ask you a little bit more about that. Will San Antonio will San Antonio police cooperate with federal agents to round up people who have not been accused of or convicted of any violent crimes? These are immigrants who have not been accused of any crimes.
We have not been asked to do that. I don't expect that we will. San Antonio follows the law. We've worked with ICE and immigration authorities to honor detainer requests for violent criminals. But look, San Antonio local law enforcement has its hands full dealing with local crime. That's their jobs. It wasn't until Texas legislature over the last few sessions have inserted themselves into this process that we even have that question. But so far, there has been a good level of cooperation through multiple administrations, Democrat and Republican, between immigration officials and San Antonio law enforcement here. We're able to do our jobs in local law enforcement. They can do theirs in immigration.
Mayor President Trump has talked about cutting funding for so-called sanctuary cities like San Antonio. And San Antonio, if that threat were to be fulfilled, could lose, I think, what, 325 million, something like that. How serious do you think that is?
Well, I want to separate that rhetoric from the funding freeze, which has also caused a tremendous amount of chaos and confusion. But I do have to correct one thing. San Antonio, under its common conventional definition of sanctuary city, is not a sanctuary city. In fact, there's not a universal definition of one, but as it's currently understood, sanctuary cities are those that refuse cooperation and obstruct immigration authorities in the course of their business. San Antonio, as I mentioned, has worked out a protocol several years ago with immigration authorities where we honor detainer requests for violent criminals. That's a public safety issue for us as well. But we work with law enforcement. There's tremendous amount of cooperation. What we also are, though, is a compassionate city. So we are going to respond to humanitarian needs regardless of people's status. People can expect to be treated humanely here. And in the course of the immigration surges, the migration surges that have happened under Trump, happened under Biden, happened under Obama before that. In dealing with those things, we can protect public safety, maintain order, and treat people with dignity. This is what a compassionate city does. And we're also a city that follows the law.
President Trump has frozen funding temporarily, at least. But what does that mean on the ground in San Antonio? Federal funding that comes to your city?
I think we're all still trying to figure that out. Thankfully, there was a district court that issued a stay on that at least until Monday, so we can try to gather some more facts. But we've gotten very little information, Jason. The OMB memo that was sent out, I think, on Tuesday night, precipitated a number of different memorandums from departments directly to departments here in the city that suggest that there's some kind of funding freeze going on, but not a lot of specifics. That, of course, a lot of that was walked back yesterday by the White House without any additional specifics. So there's there's a tremendous amount of confusion and fear. All told, there are $325 million of local San Antonio taxpayer dollars that we send to the federal government in the form of federal taxes that come back to us to perform vital basic services here in the city, federally funded but locally administered programs. So, things like our COPS grant, which, for instance, is funding 50 police officer positions, our huge airport expansion that's happening through FAA grants. We've got a tremendous amount of health services that are being performed by federally funded programs here through our local public health authority. All those, there are big question marks about how this funding freeze might affect things. But the bigger question mark to me, Jason, is whether or not any of this is legal. It's quite simply, in my view, a power grab by President Trump, and also a way of distracting us from the issues and the attempt to erode and dismantle institutions of our democracy that we've enjoyed for hundreds of years, including checks and balances and the separation of power. These are congressional approved funds. And if there is any semblance of a democratic republic in this country, hopefully Congress will recognize that it's being usurped by the president.
Yeah, Congress holds the purse strings, indeed. Let me ask one more question about immigration here. Critics of the border say undocumented immigrants are a drain on taxpayers, on local schools, on local hospitals. How much does San Antonio, do you think, spend on undocumented immigrants every year?
Well, I'll tell you that at the local level, we spend basically nothing because the work of the Migrant Resource Center, again, which is dealing with the impacts of lack of federal action on immigration reform. We don't control who comes over the border, but we do handle ourselves in terms of maintaining an orderly process and treating people with some humanity. If they need something to eat, if somebody's needs a place to stay. We can't control who comes here because of our immigration laws being controlled by the federal government, but we can't control how we treat people. And so those are the activities that are reimbursed by the federal government. This is part of the strategy to, advance a very anti-immigrant sentiment in this country, to suggest that immigrants take away from our communities. We know that they're integrated within our communities, are part of the foundation of our economies. They make our country work. So, as far as the migration issue, though, those services that are being provided are federally reimbursed because it is a result of lack of federal action on immigration reform.
I want to ask about tariffs against Mexico and Canada happening this weekend, unless those countries do more, as President Trump says he wants them to do, to stop migrants from flowing across the border, undocumented immigrants from sneaking into the U.S. What kind of impact do you expect those tariffs to have on cities like San Antonio, so close to the border?
If these tariffs are a negotiating tactic, then so be it, Jason. But I'll tell you that Texas economy, the engine of the Texas economy now is manufacturing. And there was very little, if nothing, happening in manufacturing in our South Texas region until the advent of NAFTA. And so the partnership with Mexico in terms of trade and the supply chain corridor that has developed between northern Mexico and Texas, for automotive, for aerospace, for biomedical, these two countries cooperate, and Mexico is our number one trade partner. So ensuring that we have cooperation with our friends and family in Mexico in terms of keeping our economy moving is a priority for this economy. Tariffs and the threat of tariffs is only casting a shadow on the continued economic prosperity of Texas.
A couple last questions for you, Mayor. Term limits have forced you out of the mayor's office come May. 16 candidates, I believe, running to replace you. What advice would you give the next mayor?
What my advice would be to continue to focus on the fundamentals of this city. Every city in the country operates similarly. We have families who want to make sure that they can afford to live here, that have a good quality of life, and they have access to education and good paying jobs. Our work over the last 8 years has been to ensure that we get those fundamentals right. And as a result, I think San Antonio has one of the strongest workforce and education pipelines in the country. Just about anybody who is here has an opportunity to get into a good paying career if they have the initiative to get that education, which we will assist with if there are barriers in that person's life. Continuing to build that continuing to build that workforce pipeline will keep San Antonians being able to afford a great place to live and keep businesses thriving in San Antonio.
What are you most proud of?
I'm proud of the fact that I can go back to my house at night and answer my son's question, which he was asking 12 years ago when I ran for city council the first time when he was 3 years old. Have I made San Antonio a better place? And I believe as a result of the work that we've collectively done, all of the work that we do is because of a strong team. I can answer that question and say absolutely yes. San Antonio is in a better place today than when I walked in here, and there's no doubt in my mind it's in an upward trajectory. And those businesses and families that are lucky enough to make their home in San Antonio are going to inherit a great city for the years to come.
As you walk out of City Hall, though, this spring, come May, what keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night, Jason, frankly, are the things that we're talking about: the strength of our democracy, our republic, and the participation in it requires us to be aware of the things that are going on. And frankly, I see what's happening in Washington. I see what's happening in the erosion of self-governing authority, the right of citizens to determine their outcomes and quality of life in their cities are under attack in Austin and in DC. And so for us to enjoy the America that we are so proud of and want our children to be proud of, it requires us to participate. And increasingly, I'm seeing that engagement erode to the point where people like President Trump and those around him are able to dismantle those institutions. That's a threat to our entire country. That's a threat to our way of life. And the only solution to that is getting people educated and going to vote. And that's my hope for the future.
Mayor, last question here. I read that you want to stay in public service after you leave City Hall. Do you have aspirations to be in state government, to be in federal government at all?
I have one job right now, and that is to finish the work of my office, and I fully intend to run through the tape. I would like to stay engaged. I plan to stay engaged. I will. I'm not sure what that looks like yet, but if there's work to be done in public life, I plan to do it.
Mayor, it's always good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Have a great day.